We're live. There it is, Colin. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. How about you?
Sweet. Doing all right. We're trying out. So there's some things I always forget to do around a live stream, which is like I'll invariably forget to like post to one of the social networks or something like that. I'm playing Wizard of Oz a little bit behind the scenes. Like I am NX sometimes, not really. Like Victor's NX really. But sometimes
Yeah.
I'm the guy doing some of the social media stuff, but I invariably forget one of these things. One of like the 10 different things that I intend to do at the start of every live stream.
Do I go for a
So,
checklist?
yep,
Twitter,
yep.
LinkedIn.
I literally have a checklist now. We may actually, I was talking with Mike about this yesterday. We may actually get Caitlin in. I'm going to reach out to her later today. We may get her in just to like sit down with me before everything, just so we can like go through together the checklist and just make sure we hit everything, because that's important. Apparently, the idea actually comes from like pilots, like for airplanes. They actually have a checklist that they go through and like together just say, okay, is this checked? Yes, check. And then they'll go through. I think they have a significant checklist they do for every single flight. And
That
yeah,
makes sense.
airplanes are really good at not crashing, actually, which is kind of cool. So
If you need any
cool.
way to test your theory, that's it.
I know, I know. Well, these are problems that people have solved, right? So
Yeah.
let's use what they did. We got Max in chat. Hey Max, and Teen's
Right.
here. Teen, welcome, man. We saw you last time too with Mike. But yeah, good to see you. And Lois, welcome. I'm guessing that's like a YouTube emoji, the fish. But
First
yeah,
time I've seen it.
yeah. If it's got some kind of hidden meaning, I don't know. But yeah, it's good to see. It seems positive. The vibe I get from this emoji is like generally positive. So we'll go with
Yeah.
that. But yeah, there is. So we're just kind of bantering here a little bit. Yeah. Oh, look at this! Shout out to Column.
Yeah,
Nice.
listen, have been working on the rspack stuff as well for Zephyr. So
Awesome. For Zephyr, you said? What's Zephyr?
yeah, Zephyr Cloud. They're in their launch week currently, so it's a deployment platform. Yeah.
Gotcha. I have seen this actually. I think did Jeff tweet about this recently, or X about this, whatever you call it?
It will always be tweet. It'll never be
It'll
X.
always be tweet. Yeah. Let's see. I'm just pulling it up here while Zephyr Cloud. So they just raised their seed round. That's cool. So what does Zephyr do, Colin? Do you know?
Yeah, they're basically a deployment platform where you bring your own cloud, and they will hook into your build through a rspack plugin or a webpack plugin, and it will deploy when you run the build to
Oh wow.
whatever cloud provider that you've hooked up, like Cloudflare, Netlify,
Yeah.
something like that.
That's interesting.
And
That's
it's
actually
very,
super
very
interesting.
useful for managing micro front ends and module federation projects.
Yeah. That's really cool. So it's almost like deployment as a webpack / rspack plugin. Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Like that's a dimension of things that's mainly a black box to me, honestly, which is part of the reason why I'm interested in having this conversation today. So that's cool. Are you like a webpack rspack expert now, Colin? Would you say?
I wouldn't say expert because I've done paired programming sessions with Zach Jackson, and watching him work with Webpack is unbelievable. But I would feel like I'm pretty decent at it.
That's cool. What exactly? So, like, like I said, I feel like I have a decent black box understanding about what these things are doing, but I'd be interested in just understanding just what's going on inside that black box a little bit more. Is that something that you have decent understanding into? Like my understanding is just like we have the code rewrite, right? And then we need to bundle that into something that makes an artifact that we need to put out on our web server, for example. Let's say it's a front end application, right?
Yeah.
I imagine there's like steps to that. Just like, okay, let's transpile this down. Like we were TypeScript, let's transpile this to JavaScript. Let's go from, we transpiled to ES6 JavaScript, we got to put it to ES5 or something like that. And then we want to minify, then maybe we want to uglyify so people can't reverse engineer it or easily. And then it's ready to go. Is that kind of the steps that happen?
That is, yeah, more or less it. It just takes a bunch of source files, reads them on, builds a module, like module graph from it, and then
Okay.
splits it into chunks, and then from those chunks it compiles into a bundle or multiple bundles, depending if you've got like lazy loading and chunk splitting and things like that set up.
That's interesting.
And then of course they all are pluggable, so then whatever plugins you want to add that will do additional work, that's where the real power comes from, because like there's hooks into the full compilation, all the different steps during the compilation. So
what are like
then,
the different hooks that you could hook into? Like I'm assuming it's
loads.
kind of like life cycle almost, but instead of like life cycle of a component, if we're thinking of Angular, we're thinking like life cycle of the bundle,
the compilation as a whole, really.
Yeah.
But there's so many of them. Like there can be ones for resolving a file. So how does Webpack find the file that it needs to include in the bundle? And there can be ones for just a compilation as a whole. Ones for after the bundle has been written, before the bundle's been written, things like that.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, cool. We got more people filtering in. Rune Jorgensen, welcome. And Thomas DeKeer, hey man, welcome to the stream. Purpose built for micro front ends. Oh, so is Zephyr like targeted towards that? That actually kind of makes sense. If the idea is that you're like building, if you're building deployment into your bundler, kind of makes sense that would work for micro front ends. It's interesting. I feel like there's pieces of the micro front ends approach. I just like, again, I have the black box understanding. I feel like I need to flesh that out a little bit more. But yeah, cool. So Vite and rollup plugins too. So and this is maybe another thing I don't understand the best. Like Vite behind the scenes, it is using rollup. Is that right? Or it was? Or
it still does, yeah.
It still does? Okay. But it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily forever tied to rollup, right? It's just
they're working currently on building something called roll down, which is essentially a roll up rewrite in Rust with some additional capabilities and functionality. And eventually Vite's going to switch to using roll down instead of roll up.
Okay. Is it the same people that building roll down that built roll up? Or is that a different team?
I'm not sure. I don't think so, but I'm pretty sure it's the same people that built Vite that are building roll down. So
okay. So that's that's Evan Yu and like people from Vue, right? Cool.
Yeah.
That's neat. Xavier, welcome. X-Man. How you doing? But yeah, that's cool. Interesting stuff there. So is there like a standard being built up around some of these bundlers? Like
I don't think so.
Okay. So it's not like there's life cycle hooks that they all kind of agreed on. That's not really a thing. They all have their own approach. Okay.
Yeah. The only thing
that's
would
too
be
bad.
I would assume that roll up and roll down would have the same like kind of API surface, similar to how Webpack and rspack have the same API surface.
Yeah.
Which would allow for people to switch between them pretty easily.
Right. Well, that's like the big selling point, I feel like, for rspack, right? Is just like this is the same API. essentially as Webpack. It's just written in Rust, so it's faster. Which it seemed to me like there was, as far as builders go, for whatever like this next gen kind of builder we were looking at. So it seems like next gen is just like it's simply just written in Rust. It's kind of
everything is in Rust these days.
I mean, that's essentially the approach that I see, right? Like bun, what is bun? It's like, well, let's rewrite node in Rust, right? Like that's and it's purposely like rebuilding it in Rust to the point where you can use the same APIs. The idea is you can use the same code. You just like take what we've built forever, make it more performant. And that's great. Like I think that is the approach that a lot of these things should be taking. It's just kind of wild to me it's like, oh, how do we do this? Just rewrite it in Rust. This is how we get to this is the next iteration. Which it's fine. But
writing in Rust may give you some speed benefits out of the box, but I'm not sure it was Victor that said a while back that a bad algorithm is going to be a bad algorithm in any language.
That's true.
Is also true.
Yeah. But a bad algorithm is going to be worse in a slower language.
Yeah.
Which is also true. But
it's more, I think, along the lines of you could get a better benefit faster from fixing your algorithm than rewriting everything in Rust.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think if we're looking at like magnitude, like the language that you write it in, like the speed of the language, I feel like that's gotta be like the sense versus if you're doing, you have like an algorithm that's on squared where it could be on. It's that's the dollars. Yeah. I mean, it's to the point that it doesn't matter which language your stuff's written in. So
also, just to call out a slight correction, bun is being written in Zig.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Well, I mean, fair point, but it's at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing, really, right? Like, yes, it's not
a more native language.
yeah, exactly. We're going lower down to rewrite it in some other language to make it more performant, but it's going to use the same API. That's really what I'm talking about. Same API, different language, different implementation. I think there's a lot to like in that, actually. It's just interesting. That's how a lot of these things are taking. Like TurboPack is kind of the other bundler that's kind of in this realm, right? And at least what I understand their proposal was interesting to the point where it's like, well, their builds are going to be so granular that like any individual line of JavaScript could potentially be rebuilt at a time, which I don't know. That seems too much, but I don't know. Have you looked at TurboPack at all?
I haven't looked at TurboPack. I
haven't even heard of it for a while, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like it's becoming the bundler for Next.js and not much else.
Oh, okay.
I'm not hearing it. Like it's probably not. It's probably still something that's like general purpose. But the only instances I've heard of it being used is people that are using it with Next.js.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like because it is a versatile product, it's likely prioritizing Next.js as well.
Yeah, I mean they're going to try to do something to make their big flagship product better. I imagine that only makes sense. But yeah. That's cool. The way I had heard of it, at least when it first like splashed, when people first started hearing about it, it sounded like it was going to be like a really cool way of building things or bundling things going forward. But I don't know, the proposal seemed it was raising eyebrows at that point of just like, well, how's that going to work, and like how beneficial is that actually going to be at the end of the day? So I don't know. It's interesting. Cool. Well, I think we've got a good amount of people hidden sitting around here. You want to go into Module Federation? Let's stop talking about bundlers and talk about Module Federation.
Get into the real exciting stuff.
Yeah, let's get into the real cool stuff. So maybe let's start with this column. What is Module Federation? just to make sure we're all on the same page, is Module Federation micro front ends?
It's not synonymous. It's more Module Federation is the tool that you can use to get micro front ends. So I've never seen a concrete definition of it anywhere.
Mhm.
But what I like to think of it is as being able to load modules from remote applications that don't live inside your applications bundle. So it's just another form of module loading, except it's happening across the wire rather than in the JavaScript file that's local to your application.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That I've similarly not seen it expressly like laid out what Module Federation is. I believe at least the name, like I wasn't sure if the name was specific to Webpack. Like, is Webpack's Module Federation, is that something specific? Is that like a specific implementation of some pattern? Or
No, I think the core pattern is module federation, and then different things implement module federation.
okay, so Webpack has its Module Federation, and then
rspack now has its own, and there
right.
is a Vite plugin for module federation, and I think roll down is supposed to support module federation. So
Okay,
module federation itself is more of a concept, like a pattern.
gotcha. So this is something that all of the bundlers are using. So like before we were talking about, they're not, unfortunately, they're not like the bundler community isn't sort of coming together around like the same lifecycle hooks. But it sounds like we actually are talking about Module Federation the same way across all of them. Was that fair to say?
Yes, but
Okay.
they don't all have interoperability between them.
Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. So Lois says Module Federation itself is an architectural pattern for micro front ends, and there are many. That's interesting. I'm curious what the other patterns would be actually. Or is that something you know, Colin?
There's single spa, and you could use iframes if you wanted to.
Right. I mean, I guess iframes are are micro front ends at the end of the day too, huh?
The
That's
only things I
interesting.
would say is that Module Federation, I wouldn't say it's specifically for micro frontends because you can use it in a node environment as well.
Interesting. That's interesting. What's the idea there? Is it that you'd actually load, like at runtime, load in more like
Modules.
runnable JavaScript, more
Yeah,
runnable modules? Okay,
just in a node environment rather than in the browser.
right. That makes sense. Hey, Jimmy's here. Hey, Jimmy. Welcome to the stream, man. But yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and so yes, you can have a federated backend. That's interesting.
So one of the big features for that we've seen implemented is for like SSR, for server-side
Mhm.
rendering, where the host application needs to server render the file, but it's pointing to a route that is living in a remote application somewhere. So you would load it into the node, and then it would server render from there. But you
Right.
could go as far to create like a pluggable backend system where, depending on configuration that you fetch at runtime, load separate bundles. You could
Mhm.
use for A/B testing, things like that. So
Gotcha. Oh, that's interesting. Very cool. I mean, for like SSR, that actually makes perfect sense. I mean, it's kind of like doing a micro front end using your backend, I guess. Which
yeah,
yeah, it makes sense. Well, cool. So, well, I guess module federation then. Uh, I mean, it is kind of what the words are, right? It's a federation of modules. It's a way. I mean, I guess it's interesting to me like how the bundlers play into it. So like Lois is here from Zephyr. They're building deployment into like the bundling step. I guess like is the idea as you bundle it in a way that these things can live independently but still know about each other, know how to tie each other
yes,
together. How does
essentially, yeah.
okay, how does that actually play out?
So the module federation for Webpack and rspack have some like an API essentially that each exposed module or federated module needs to expose that can be accessed once it's loaded. So the two off the top of my head are get and init. So those are two functions that are called once the remote is loaded so that it can be initialized into the host environment, and then it can be run within the host environment. And part of that is then setting up, is seeing what dependencies it might need, like if it needs React and things like that. All of that gets added by the Module Federation plugin. So it writes the chunk in such a way that all of that information is added during build time. The only time you ever usually need to worry about it is if you were doing dynamic Module Federation with the old Webpack plugin. But even now, with Module Federation 2.0, there's an easier approach to that with the runtime. The runtime federation, where there's some utils that you can use that just takes away that kind of deep level, like deep knowledge needing.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, that maybe let's move away from like talking about this abstractly. And maybe we can move into just looking at NX and how we support this. So we just dropped, it wasn't yesterday actually, it was the night before we dropped NX 19.7. And I think you had like a tweet out that explains some of this stuff, but essentially we've moved to rspack as the default bundler now for our module federation, correct?
For React Module Federation. So we still don't use it for Angular because Angular and rspack still just isn't there. It's not really the fault of rspack team or anything like that. It's just that supporting Angular compilation is very complex.
No. Right. Yeah. Angular does interesting stuff. So yeah. Makes sense. But cool. So what about for like just vanilla JavaScript web apps?
You could use it. It is possible. We don't have any built-in support for that, so we focused on React and Angular as the two tools for where we added our module federation support. We might expand that in the future, but yeah, for now it's
right.
React.
That makes sense. Angular. Cool. Well, can we get started like looking at how this looks for folks now?
Yeah, sure. If you want to create an empty empty integrated workspace.
Okay, let's do that. So we'll do create NX workspace. Yeah, latest. We'll just say module federation example. And so here, should we just do empty?
Okay. Yeah, do empty.
Say integrated. We'll hit this later. Boom. Sure.
That's a new question. I've not seen that question.
I know. I feel like we don't always ask that question. It must be something about the route we took. As your Git hosting provider. That's interesting.
I wonder if it's to do with the NX login.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Cool. Dig into let's open up VS Code. All right, so we've got a nice empty workspace here. Cool.
Perfect playground. Okay, I would add.
I almost wonder if we should have done this on Stackblitz. Yeah, so people could follow along.
I haven't tried it out.
Yeah, let's not do it live. We'll try it some other time. I feel like I've messed around with it a little bit and hit an issue or two, but
yeah, I think Stackblitz might let you see one browser preview as well. I suppose you could just look at the host. I'm not sure what limitations there might be on opening certain ports.
Gotcha.
On that.
Yeah. Well, let's just stick to running it on my machine for now. Maybe we can like push up to GitHub and then send it to Stackblitz when we're done for people to see.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Okay, I would add the NX React plugin.
Cool. NX add NX React. Can you all see this all right? Let's make it a little bigger. Cool. Plugin installed.
Yep. And then the next step would be to generate a host called shell, potentially. And then do space -- remotes equals, I would chart and checkout. Let's just say
Cart and checkout.
Pretend yeah, we're going to pretend e-commerce.
Is it comma separated for these?
Yes.
Cool. Oh, good. I'll do a dry run just to make sure. I like doing that. Let's just say none here.
Playwright, if we're going to choose one.
Oh, okay. Should I go back?
No, it's fine. It's only a dry run.
Yeah. And so here we're going to ask the question, it looks like. Yeah. So we'll say rspack.
Yep.
Oh, this generator does not support dry run.
No, most generators don't if they need to use that ensure package util that we have.
Cool. So we'll say playwright and we'll say rspack. There we go. So we are, as part of the generator, it looks like we're pulling in and installing the rspack plugin now. So that's neat.
Hopefully it doesn't take too long.
Yeah. My internet, I think, is slowing to a crawl at the moment. We have, while we're waiting for these things to install, we do have a question here from Jamal. Hey, Jamal. Jamal joined late. Can someone explain what the rspack plugin does? That's a good question. What does it do?
What rspack plugin? It's a very broad question. It could be
that's
the
a good
NX
question,
rspack plugin. It could be the rspack module federation plugin. It could be any rspack plugin.
The plugin is kind of a loaded term here.
Yeah, let's assume it's the NX rspack plugin, and what it does is it adds rspack capabilities to your NX projects.
Yeah. I think in general, this is maybe a good segue to just chat about like what plugins are and like what are available. But if we go to nx.dev, I think it's just /API. No. Maybe it's in here. What is the route for this? NX API. Got it. Yeah. So this will show you all of the plugins that we support first party, I guess you could say. So like I love just showing this because it drives home the facts like NX has a huge surface area. We are supporting all of these technologies and making them all work together so you could kind of pick them a la carte, right?
We're also not limited to these technologies. It's worth saying.
Yeah.
It's just that we put more focus on these.
Yeah. I think that's actually a huge point, Colin. Yeah. It's like when you see a plugin that's supported by us, that means that like we have generators here to fast track you to a getting started point. We have executors here to support like how they run, and so they'll run better with NX. But at the end of the day, like you can just use NX as a task runner as well. So you don't, if you're wanting to use a technology you don't see on this list, you can pretty much just use it like you would in their getting started, and NX will kind of step in from there when it comes to like actually running the task. It kind of depends on the tool, right? So, but yeah, it looks like Xavier's helping Jamal out in chat. That's awesome.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, cool. So these are all our plugins. When we installed, so by installing the React plugin, specifically what that gave us access to was this one generator we ran, right?
Yeah.
All the way up here. So this host generator came in as part of that React plugin. And then by running it, we went in and installed our rspack plugin. I imagine that's giving us like an executor to run essentially, right?
Yes. So now that it's generated, if you take a look at any of the project.json files, you'll see that the executors are there.
Let's take a look at shell. I guess that was so this is like the parent application. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, we can see build. There's the executor. So this gives us access to like an API full of options that we can adjust here. And actually, each one of these options we can also adjust at the command line level as well.
Yes,
which is cool. But yeah, it's kind of like you're building your CLI as you go. By installing the plugins, the NX CLI has access to more things,
more features.
Yeah. Quick question here from chat from Jacubus. Do you have plans to support Module Federation via Vite?
There is no official Vite Module Federation. There's
not yet, or do you know?
There's just roll down might eventually, but until that is finished, then that's the only chance there will be of that.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Cool.
Sorry, 2 seconds here, just.
Yeah. I have this problem all the time too. My doors, so I'm in temporary housing at the moment. And our doors, like, they lock, but they don't lock in a way that actually prevents children from pushing the door open. So I think Column's getting some child aggro here as well. That's fine. So is there Angular support as well? We actually hit this, Pac-Man, in previously. Right now, rspack, we do have Module Federation support for Angular. We don't support it with rspack yet, just because Angular doesn't play well with rspack yet. Is that am I saying the right thing, Column?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly correct.
Cool. So I imagine like this is something we endeavor to do with a lot of our stuff. It's like you can follow the same general path regardless of the underlying technologies. So in this example, as we're going through it, we're doing Module Federation in React with rspack. I imagine you can do pretty much the same similar steps, Column, only selecting like, we'll do it in an Angular application, and we'll follow like the Webpack implementation instead.
Yes, exactly. Cool. And actually, to be fair, we're using that Module Federation enhanced package under the hood for both Webpack and rspack, which actually gives all the new features that are going onto rspack for Module Federation to Webpack users, especially in the Angular scenario.
Cool.
So you still get the same. It's just a slower build.
Cool. Well, I mean, I feel like that's a huge benefit that you can get from doing the kind of NX workspace approach here too, is just there's some implementation down below. Like, it doesn't matter really to the developer so much, or the app developer at least. Is this a Webpack implementation or is this the rspack implementation? Hopefully you go through the same work and it works the same either way. So
yeah, the config and everything should be the same. So
cool. So yeah, I guess like we're looking at the build. Obviously the build, we're going to use the rspack to build it. What about for serving this? How does that work?
So it uses another executor we created, which is Module Federation Dev Server.
Okay.
And under the hood that calls rspack Dev Server, which under the hood calls Webpack Dev Server.
Nice.
But it's just faster.
So is the idea here, like when, well, I don't know, maybe I'm skipping ahead, but is the idea here that we just say serve the shell, and that's going to go through and serve out all of our childs?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly why we built this executor, is so that we know based on it being an NX workspace, having all the information on the NX graph, all the child remote applications that this shell uses, and from there we can then spin up all of the remote applications, but we do it in such a way that it's scalable and it's not going to crunch your computer's resources and still provide you with a pretty good developer experience. Right.
So you mentioned the NX graph. I figured I'd pull that up just now. So I just ran NX graph in the terminal and that started up the web server that I'm looking at right now. It looks like a lot of these things are already kind of connected. That's probably just with the way we set a lot of this stuff up, I imagine, right? Yeah. Because we said create our shell and here create the checkout and the cart remotes.
Yep.
So we can see here's our shell. Our shell already has its dependency lines drawn to checkout and cart because that's the way we kind of drew it. What is so there's a dashed line here. Is that, what does that specify actually? Is that something specific to our module federation?
I don't think so.
Okay. Interesting. I wonder what the dash line comes from.
It
I
used to
thought there
be
was
that the
something
implicit
specific.
dependencies were dash lines. Now it doesn't seem that way. I'm
Yeah,
going to need to go again 2 seconds.
that's all right. I'll investigate. I want to see where these lines are being drawn while you're dealing with more child aggro. But let's see. So if we look at our shell, so normally the way NX works is we look at your import statements. The import statements are actually going to draw the lines on the graph, which is like maybe a little counterintuitive to, I think, how most people think the graph works, or how it should work even sometimes. Like, I feel like sometimes people feel like you should draw the graph and then everything like flows out from there. It's actually the opposite. We construct your graph dynamically based on your import statements. And this is done on purpose so that like you just code, like you just work and you just code as you normally would, and NX kind of figures out how things go from there. I'm pretty sure it's the lazy imports that are causing that dotted line.
I would
wonder,
be surprised if it was.
okay,
I feel
let's
like
try.
the implicit dependencies used to be the dotted lines.
Yeah, let me just try. Okay, let me try. I'm going to try like commenting out this line so we don't have to use the cart, and then just like import. I don't know. That might not work. What is this import statement? So we're importing from cart module. Is that, how does that
It's a
work?
TS path.
Okay. So that's
So
just, yeah, go ahead.
cart is the name of our remote application, and then slash module is the exposed module from Module Federation.
Gotcha. Let me see. So if I comment out this line, what's going to happen in our graph? Yeah, so that's where the line's coming from. I wonder, so how would I just import from our cart project otherwise? It would just look like
import
from cart
slash module. Yeah.
Okay. Slash module. I don't know. Let's see. Does that draw a solid line now? Yes, it does.
That's interesting. So we now have
I remember
based on dynamic imports.
Yeah, I think that is what that dotted line means, is a dynamic import. So that's cool.
Okay.
What is lazy though? React.lazy. That's from coming from React.
Yes, it's needed to if you try to lazy load any component, you need to use React.lazy so that it can resolve it correctly.
Gotcha. Interesting.
And return the component out of it.
Cool. Yeah. So essentially what we're saying is here's our cart component, but rather than importing this, I mean, I guess we do import this from the module, but we're importing this not from our local bundle. Rather, we're importing it from another server. We're importing JavaScript. We're importing its code from another server.
Yeah, so the Module Federation plugin will look at these imports and it will match them to the remote applications definition in your Module Federation config. And if it matches, then it will essentially skip doing like any kind of bundling for it and instead insert resolutions and webpack requires and things like that for fetching it over the wire instead.
Cool. Yeah, I want to, at some point, I want to make sure we run the build. I kind of want to just like dig through the build code.
Do you really want to dig through the build code?
I don't know. Is there a way we could like do it without, is there like a way we can do it with it being human readable, really? Or no?
Yes, if you pass in configuration equals development, it will be human readable, but that's a loose definition of human readable.
That's a loose loose way of saying it.
I could talk you through parts of it that I know well enough, but
yeah. Well, this is where we probably need Zach Jackson to come in and like tell us how a lot of these things are getting tied together. I bet he does really interesting work. Like I bet his stuff's like real interesting in a way I would find stuff real interesting. Speaking of which, Eric, welcome. Eric's a big user on the Discord. Welcome, man. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, like we had said before, you can kind of do this with Angular. We do have the Module Federation support, just not rspack, but really implementation detail at the end of the day. So yeah. And Moa, welcome. Cool. So this is the shell. I guess like this is good enough to just understand, well, this is how you can consume from a remote. Can a remote consume from another remote? I would assume so.
Yes.
How does that work if there's circular dependencies in that? I imagine
it
that
also
just
works.
doesn't work.
No, it works too. Module Federation has Module Federation has some HEs, I think. It definitely is an example of how you can do that. I wouldn't recommend it. Circular dependencies in general just aren't good to have in any sort of environment, but it will work. It is possible.
Okay. Interesting. Neat. And well, I don't know. Let's try. Can we maybe try that? Like, let's put the cart, or let's put checkout inside of cart, because that kind of makes sense. Like, it makes sense.
We'll need to do something first.
Okay, what do we need to do?
Okay, so if you're putting checkout inside of cart, so we need to go to the cart's Module Federation config.
Okay, cart. Okay, so it gave us a Module Federation config. Is this for every one of our remotes and for the shell as well?
Yes, every Module Federation project that you create with NX will create this file.
Okay, so we need to tell it what its remotes are right here.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So we need to do the same for cart.
Is it? Okay, gotcha. Okay, so we want to go to the cart, and we're going to just do like this, I imagine. Like, throw the remotes in here, but obviously it doesn't need itself. This is it essentially.
Yep.
Cool.
And then just your import.
Right. We still need to import. Right. Oh, that's interesting. So cart actually has an app.tsx.
Yes, and that is what is exposed. So if you want to take a quick look at that config file again, that Module Federation config.
Yeah, for cart. There you go.
You will see that we expose that path/module, and it points to source remote entry TS. But if you look at that remote entry TS, you will see that all it's doing is exporting a default component from the app.tsx file.
Gotcha. So let me go back to. Okay, so that's like we're importing that and calling it cart over here, I guess. But inside of the cart module, this is known as the app, or at least that's the name of it. We're looking at
file.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like I would want to name this cart, even though, like, I get it. Like, it is. I guess technically it is its own application. The way we're using it, I just feel like, I don't know.
This is just implementation details too. Like, you can change what your remote entry is and whatever, but
I mean, I guess I could just change it right here, and I'm happy now, right? Like, that's
it
like
does
the name of this function doesn't matter after this file. It's just the way we're
because even the remote entry file is just exporting the default rather than any named export.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Cool. Ooh, how did the styles get bundled in here too? I mean, I guess that goes out on the server as well. Is there like encapsulation built in for that?
I'm not 100% sure. I know for things like Angular, it can bundle styles with the component. With React, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There is definitely work done for handling styling in the Module Federation 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
I am not 100% sure on it.
Yeah, I'm just curious if like there's some built-in encapsulation on that. It would make sense. It would make sense for there to be, because otherwise, like, it seems to me a lot of the advantage here is like you can have a team that's responsible for their own deliverable down to the point of them being responsible for their own web server. So you don't want to make these teams cross communicate about like, don't use that CSS class name. It's going to mess us up.
Yeah.
That seems terrible. So I imagine there's probably some support for making sure these are encapsulated so they don't bleed into other applications while still being able to import from like some lower theme at the bottom. So, but yeah, we do have a question in here. This is interesting. Is it possible to have a module with a route exported? Cool. I mean, I guess the way we're doing this in the shell, like the shell's kind of in charge of routing, and we just imported the cart here. But we are saying here's the shell knows about the routing. We just insert the cart element into there.
Yeah.
So if cart had its own children, how does that work, Column? Actually, I don't know.
It still just acts like a React component at that stage. So
I see. So this cart could know about all of its children down to its routing, essentially. Yeah. Okay, neat.
At that stage, it is basically still just a React component. It's a JavaScript module. The only thing that Module Federation is doing here is how it resolves the component where it gets the JavaScript chunk from.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, Module Federation is just that, right? Like, it's just none of this other stuff matters. It's just like number one, where does this shell find this? Like, where does it actually pull this in from? Yeah. And on the other side, like in the a priori side, how do we bundle it in a way that it's there?
It can be fetched and used.
So those things kind of have to like work together to make this all happen. But it's kind of cool. Yeah, like Moa says, this is kind of cool how this all works. And it's neat that actually, if you look at what we're doing, aside from like the only thing that would be different from how I would be coding normally is just line 7's just a little bit different in how I import this cart component. And
is it? What's different about it for you?
Yeah, I mean, what else? Like, if I wasn't using Module Federation, I mean, we had this in the line before, right? I think if I like undo, like essentially, this is what my import statement would be if I was in a non-Module Federation
but situation. If you wanted to use lazy loading or code splitting, it would look exactly like line 7.
Right. Yeah. So even that. Yeah. I mean, I guess normally I wouldn't want to lazily load these. Like that's the only difference, right? Is that I want to dynamically load in this component at, well, I don't know. I guess maybe I would want to lazily load it, but
it depends. Like there's some things you want eagerly loaded in general applications, but there gets to a stage where you start thinking about, well, what chunks can we load lazily when a user is at a certain route, things like that.
Right.
And that the way they achieve that is literally exactly the same as what we've got here.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's Sam and Sue. Yeah. This is exactly what was going through my thought process. Is you there are sometimes you want to use lazy imports still, because why would you load in that additional chunk and like increase your initial bundle size unnecessarily? But I guess like at the end of the day, I mean, is that maybe the point you're trying to get to? Is like,
this is actually exactly
the same.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool. I actually wondered. So we're kind of going from a greenfield approach here, just looking at things in this example. It's kind of cool. Like we just ran the run statement. That's all we did. And it's all kind of here. We just told it, here's all the different remotes we need. I actually wonder, like, it doesn't seem like, just given what we're looking at, it doesn't seem like it would be that weird to like migrate an existing app and then move it to Module Federation. No. Is that something like we have generators for?
Generators, no, but it's pretty easy to do. Like if you already have your application set up, it's maybe following domain-driven development and has a good structure to it, where you've got things in libraries which are its own domain, then you could run the remote generator and then your remote entry could just re-export from your library's top domain.
Oh, that's
top export
interesting.
from its domain, and all of a sudden now you've got a remote application that you can lazy load and pull on.
Yeah. So if we were to just like generate a remote here, so it's almost like we'd have like a shell for each library we wanted to turn into a remote module.
Yep.
And just the only thing that it would do, it would be the product of whatever this generator would spit out. But then inside of like the index file, we just like import star from target library. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Seems pretty straightforward, honestly. So that's really neat. I guess if you just wanted to take one and adjust it, you pretty much need what, like the module federation config. You need to drop in I don't know, this rspack config. You probably want to touch your project JSON to use
the rspack,
the rspack,
whichever one you're using. Your main.ts needs to change slightly, but
let's take a look at that. The main.ts for these.
Yeah, it's just important bootstrap, and all that does is make sure that it's a lazy loaded startup. It used to be a limitation of module federation for loading things correctly across the wire. I think that's removed now. I'm not 100% sure. I know there's some conversations about it, but
yeah.
And then if you look at the bootstrap file, all that is now is what used to be in your main.ts file.
So where's the bootstrap file? Is that?
It should be in source.
Oh, okay.
And all that is now just what was in your main.tsx file.
Okay, so this is just where we call the render.
Yeah.
Essentially. Okay. Oh, interesting. So we're dropping in a root to render there. That's interesting.
Only in the shell. This line only gets hit in the shell.
Oh.
So inside Cart, because we're exporting the app component from remote entry, when shell resolves the Cart remote, it's looking at remote entry. It's not looking at any of this bootstrap.tsx or anything like that.
Gotcha. I see. So this is we just have this. This actually doesn't probably get put out in the bundle. This is just if we ever wanted to serve it by itself.
Yeah.
I guess. Okay. Interesting. I want to take a look at the project JSON here for the remotes here too. So
yeah.
Okay. So the build actually just uses the same rspack executor as the shell. I guess there's not much difference there. Do we have a serve for it? Ooh, how does that work?
It uses the same code, and because there's no remotes defined on it, it just spins itself up.
Okay, so we could serve this one by itself if we wanted to.
Yes.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, Sam and Sue are going exactly where I'm headed with all this stuff. Cool. All right. So that's okay. Things are making sense conceptually. Can we see this in action? How do I imagine we just do nxserve shell?
Yeah, do you want to remove the comment just so people can see your terminal?
Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you. Cool. So yeah, we'll nxserve shell. And
it's back. There we go.
Wrong focus. Wrong focus. There we go. Okay.
So we can dig through these logs a little bit.
Yeah, I want to see where
some of the real interesting things happens.
This is part of the problem with sharing your screen on a stream. Normally, this is where I'd be at normally. Is like legitimately right about here. So this is very like claustrophobic right now.
I feel the same way constantly when I'm doing these.
Yeah, but okay. Starting module federation with 2 remotes. Okay,
so it detected there was 2 remotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it detected there were 2 remote applications. What it didn't detect was you telling it, okay, one of these remotes is a dev remote. So because of that, we built them statically. And what that means is we just run the build on those remote applications. So that means now their build artifacts are sitting on our dist folder. And then if you scroll back up a little bit.
Sorry, let me just see the dist. Okay, so we built the 2 remotes here. We actually didn't build the shell there, so that's cool.
So welcome to remote applications. If you scroll just up a little bit more, you see that one now saying starting static remote proxies.
Yes.
And
Okay.
that essentially is saying because our host, our shell application expects our chart and our checkout to live on port 4201, 4202, we're going to create an express proxy, which will proxy any requests from 4201 and 4202 to, if you scroll down a little bit, this HTTP server. So what this HTTP server is doing is it's just exposing the dist folder, essentially, of chart and checkout, and through HTTP server. So the express proxy is going to proxy request from 4201 to 4203/chart, and it's going to proxy request from 4202 to 4203/checkout.
Gotcha.
And then rspack dev server kicks in, and it spins up your shell application with webpack dev server.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things. Here's where I'm latching on right now. So building 2 static remotes and then built 2 static remotes. We see them in the dist directory.
Yeah.
I imagine this means if I go back to like one of my remotes and touch their code, this is not going to catch on the fact that I changed those remotes, right? Those are just, that's a shot in the pan. This is actually designed, I imagine, so that maybe my team just works on the shell for some reason. So we don't want to touch their code on purpose. So this way I can kind of laser in on the stuff I own.
Exactly. And with nxCloud, you'll get the caching benefit of the other teammates. So the other teams may be working on all those different remote applications. You'll just use their cache instead. So it's a lightning fast startup, essentially.
If I were to rerun it, I imagine we'd see that go maybe even a little faster. I guess these things aren't that big, so it doesn't take much time.
Yeah, but even that was a lot faster.
Yeah. It did seem a little bit faster, for sure.
So this HTTP server, all it does is just expose those files in the dist folder on a port, and then express proxies are set up so that your shell can still find them correctly without having to do any weird mapping to this single port that's now serving the files.
Gotcha. So, okay, so this is saying available on 4203. Is this the shell?
No, that's the file server.
That's the file server. Okay.
Yeah. So if you scroll to right at the bottom of that log, you'll see NX server ready at localhost 4200.
Yes. So this, if I hit this in a browser, where's my browser go? 4200. Okay. So we're on home right now. We could see shell. We go to cart.
We were making some changes to turn cart on to checkout, the load checkout. So I think that's probably what's happened there.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there like some errors? I think I may have left something halfway in.
Yeah. There's no right there.
What did I do? What happened? In the app TSX.
It was in the shells app TSX. We moved to the right.
Oh, you're right. Let's go to the app for the shell. Close this out. Yeah, cart's not being used right now, so we want to put that. We just want to uncomment. Okay, but so this is a change we made to the shell, so we should see this hit, right?
Yeah. So the cart already loaded.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had noticed that, but the HMR kicked on there.
Cool. Yeah, I did actually. I didn't notice it immediately because I went back to home, but yeah, we were in cart before. This was blank, and now it's here, so that's kind of cool.
So if you want to take a look at your network and then do a refresh.
Let's do that, and let's make this bigger because yeah. Okay, let's get rid of this. And I don't think there's any way this is going to show very well. There, we're in mobile mode. So you said hit a refresh here? Should I go to cart and hit a refresh, or should I start?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. So we'll hit a refresh.
And okay, so we should look for remote entry.js file.
Okay.
And you will see that it's request URL. If you look at the headers first, is 4201.
So
And
this is this kind of the instructions? The remote entry is just where we know
yeah,
to hit every single time? Okay.
yeah. So if you go back to your IDE
Mhm.
and take a look at your disk folder for chart, it should have the remote entry in it.
Okay. So we're looking at our built artifact for cart. And so there's the remote entry.
Yep.
Very human readable. Very nice.
As always.
Yeah.
And if you do a Control F for get, maybe open bracket, just to limit it a bit further.
Open paren.
Yeah, so that async get is part of that API which Module Federation expects to be in a remote module so that it can call. And you'll see that there's some things there called load factory, the share scope map, remote info.share scope, and things like that. So that's how it sets up the shared dependencies that this remote
Okay.
application needs.
Gotcha. So as part of the bundling for this module, we built this remote entry as a way of saying, okay, here's is
Everything
this
that this module needs to run,
right?
essentially, all the information that this module needs to run.
Yeah,
And then
I'm just
Webpack
trying to see if
understands
there's any
that.
like further imports from here because there's other JavaScript files, right? So here's like the main. What's the difference
Yeah,
between the
so
main and the remote entry? Is
remote
remote entry
entry
pulling
is
this?
no, possibly
Okay.
not. That main is probably just your main.tsx if it's an application being built. What it
Okay.
might pull in is your 964 file there. It might pull in
Okay.
your 474 and things like that. These are your chunks.
Okay.
And can you check to see if there's a common.js?
Like a CJS
It,
file?
it should be a file, yeah, I think, potentially.
I
Oh,
didn't
maybe
see
not.
one. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Sometimes there's common, and all the common, maybe that, maybe. Common basically means some things that may already be loaded by a different remote application, so it doesn't need to reload that file. And these chunks, the 173294, are usually things like React, React DOM, and other vendor like packages.
So this is just a chunk the way the bundler figured this makes sense to chunk it here, right?
Yeah, so you can see actually there, like in that preview, it's talking about reactjs.org/doc/error decoder. So I'm pretty sure this is the React.
This is probably the React
DOM.
chunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So if our remote application, once it gets loaded onto the shell, if the Federation detects that React is already loaded and it matches the correct version and correct required version and things like that, then we will never load this chunk because it's already loaded in the browser.
Gotcha. I wonder actually, I bet we won't be able to see this very well. But checkout probably has the same exact one, right?
Yeah,
So
it does. So if you look at that file name 173, so it's that chunk ID that is the key.
interesting. So there's a different like hash after the 173, but
Yeah,
so it did it do this on purpose so that they would have similar chunks so we would be able to reuse them interchangeably between the two?
I like to think of it as magic at that point. I don't know how
Okay.
it works.
Fair enough. We need to get Zach Jackson in here to talk about this stuff here. Oh, we do have a question here from Sam and Sue again. Let's maybe hit that while we're looking at this. Our shell host is a separate repo altogether. Could this executor
No.
still be useful? Okay, no.
No.
Yeah, I think a lot of our stuff is designed for these things being in the same repo. I don't want to spoil too much, but I know there's some stuff we have coming down the pipes eventually for linking repos together. But I don't think we can talk about that yet. So I'm just going to leave that.
I'm also not sure if this would be able to be supported by it. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it would be.
You still, I should caveat, like our executor won't be able to do anything useful here, but you can still use Module Federation with two different repos and point it to have your shell point to remotes that are living in the other repo and things like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But yeah, maybe Sam and Sue, to your point, we do have coming up. It's actually available now, but when we come out with NX 19.8, either at like the end of this week or sometime next week, we're introducing NX import, which is a way of like importing another project into your local project, into your local NX workspace. It doesn't necessarily have to be another NX workspace. But this is just like a nice, easy way of including those things together, and it'll do like the things you would probably want, like preserve Git history and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, cool. Yeah, good to see it's helpful for sure. Cool. Well, yeah. So that's, I mean,
so that's if we want to quickly touch on something that's going to affect or going to be used by most people. If we go back to our terminal and turn cancel what's running currently, and then run the same command almost exactly, but we do use -- dev remotes and then point at the equals chart.
Could we do like this? Not to say we would, but could we?
You can.
We can. Okay.
I would normally recommend focusing on one, maybe two remotes, because
yeah,
you're spinning up a lot of file watchers.
Right.
So it's
file watchers are going to slow you down significantly, right?
Yeah.
What about I think I had heard from Jack at some point. There's like an optimization we were looking at where, you know, it's potentially like these modules potentially all each have their own server, right? Like each one of the modules in this federated module, they could potentially have their own server. They don't necessarily have to though. Like you could have multiple of them on the same web server. Is that, do we have any support for that? Like when maybe in the step before, so we weren't watching any remotes before. Do we just have one server for all of our statically built stuff, or did each one have their own web server?
No, each one had a one single server, but we set up proxy servers to proxy the request.
Okay. So each one did have their own dedicated web server, but with proxies, it's as if they didn't.
Yeah, essentially, it's less resource intensive.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense. All right, so we'll run this one, and this way we can see this in action. Okay, so here, yeah, we see we didn't see this before, so this is a web server ready and watching, I imagine, on 4201, right? Okay, so now if I go to, I guess we'd want to adjust the cart component itself.
Yeah.
Is that this one right here, maybe? No, that's the shell. Let's clear these windows out and we'll open up the app TSX for the cart. And we'll just say, hi. So, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Carrots, man. What you gonna do?
Yeah.
So
you've seen in terminal everything reloaded and then it just updated.
Yeah.
So that's what we normally tell
curiosity
people.
Here. I can hit 4201 by itself, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I clicked a thing there on accident.
Big mark.
Interesting. So there it is. This brings up all kinds of interesting potential stuff, I feel like, for a team that's just focused on this. But yeah, that's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, so we normally tell people they run the host application with a dev remote, because a lot of the times your shell or host application is setting up things like config services, authentication services,
right,
global state, and all these other kinds of things, and all that normally lives in your host application, and then your remote applications kind of depend on that to be available.
Yeah, I think it's always important to serve things up in a way that's as similar as possible to the way the user's actually going to see it.
Yes,
right.
That's exactly.
There's all kinds of weird side effects you don't know you're going to see or not. So
yeah, that's literally where I was getting to, is that I tend to view it as I'm developing how the user is going to use my application.
Right. Yep. 100%.
Even if it is all separate and it's all micro front ends, the user doesn't know that. That's an implementation detail. The user is only ever going to see one site to them.
Right.
And that's the best way to continue developing it.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. That's super cool. I mean, I feel like we did a very hand wavy job of like showing how this could go, but I can definitely see from this how we could extrapolate from this. Like this is we have the A, the B, and the C right now. At this point, you could go down, you could scale this up as much as you want. I feel like it's kind of clear how you would go about doing that. I think the only thing would be maybe if you want to create a new remote, you use the remote generator. So your XG remote. If you
and it has a flag which accepts the host. So it's a host flag where you can tell it which host they wired up to.
Host equals shell like that, I imagine.
Yep.
So we just say boo.
Product details.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not
ruining my e-commerce vibe.
I'm not clever. We're just having foo. It's just deal with it. Deal with the column. Okay, so that made our foo. I imagine that also adjusted things in here.
Module federation config. Should I have remote?
That's cool.
Yep.
So the one thing that's like standing out to me that I wish we could do some more with is either some sort of plugin or utility that's just like let NX figure this out for you, because this is like a way of having to manually know about the dependencies.
No, we can't really do that because your shell, we can't just assume that a workspace and all its remote applications are going to be remote applications for that shell.
Right. But I don't know. I'm just thinking like we know it at the time of like drawing our dependency graph, right? So I wonder if there's some way we could do that where it's just like, hey, we actually know about all the dependents here that do have, I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like there's maybe something we could do, but
there's also the concern of being able to override these remote applications. So you're passing in just names here.
Right.
But under the hood, we are figuring out, okay, this is this remote application. We'll look at the graph. We'll see what its port it should be served on.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, you could point one of these remote applications to a locally deployed or staging environment.
Right. So like even a project that's living on another repo entirely. So we don't want to, we definitely wouldn't want to like clobber this or like say NX owns this entirely. But it would be like, this is what I would be thinking is like you have something like this that's like get deps from NX or something like that. And then like, I don't know, spread that. And then you could like add your manual ones behind this. So like if there's some store one that's in some other, I don't know, would that work or?
Potentially, but so you're using stores as string.
I'm not trying to over-engineer this or anything. I'm just thinking this would be cool.
I know. If you look at line 9, you'll see how we define overriding where the remote URL is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we could do that with like a get depth from NX spread, because we'd end up adding 2 separate remote applications with the same name.
Yeah. I see. Interesting. Well, cool. We're getting to the end of our time here. Is there anything else we really want to hit before we wrap this up, Colin?
If you want to show maybe generate a shell with 2 remotes with Webpack.
Okay. So let's just call it shell 2.
Yeah, shell 2 and remote 1 and remote 2.
Yeah.
Make sure it's the host generator.
Host. Yes. Sorry. I saw shell. And I thought that was the name of our generator. Say remotes equals.
Yeah, remote 1, remote 2.
1, remote 2.
And then dash bundler equals Webpack. Or just select it now.
Yeah, let's just do it through the interactive, because that was one of the questions. So Webpack. Yeah. There we go. So shell 2. We have shell 1 and shell 2, or just shell and shell 2.
Yep.
So this looks similar, right?
It all looks it should all be exactly the same, except it's a Webpack config rather than rspack, and the executor is Webpack except for rspack.
Cool. So if I wanted to go from one to the other, this is the line I would change, I imagine, yeah?
A little bit more, because there's the Webpack config property and things like that. I have a generator in PR, which is going to be added to the NX rspack package, which will convert this automatically for you.
Okay, so that's not here, right? That's not here yet?
No, not here yet. No,
not yet, but that's maybe coming at some point to do that automatically for us. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So if you want to just run a build on shell 2.
Cool. Well,
and then after this, we'll do a build on shell 1, and we can just
Uh-oh.
visually compare the time difference. Oh, that's interesting. We've had an issue. No files found. Remote entry chunk. Okay. It's something to look into.
Yeah, something went weird there. I don't know. Let's try.
It's the Module Federation manifest plugin. That's not even our plugin. That's something that Module Federation 2.0 was pulled on.
Gotcha. So building the shell was fine. It's just the Webpack one seems to be having the issue. Manifest.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. I might need to reach out to Zach Jackson about that.
Okay. But I guess the point you were trying to make is rspack is faster. Yeah.
Yes, it's a lot faster.
Nice. Well, that's cool. Nice to see that coming in. Get that Rust supercharging.
Yeah.
But cool. Colin, thanks so much for jumping in and doing this. This was fun. I liked learning about this stuff. I feel like my bundler black box is a little bit more filled out. I don't think I ever want to like fill that out all the way. You know, like God bless Zach Jackson, but yeah, I don't.
Anybody working in a bundler space? Yeah,
I feel like I honestly feel like it would be fun to just focus on that. But if you're building an application, there's no way that's what you should be like spending your time on for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you, Zach Jackson, for that. But yeah, cool. All right, and number one Neek. Yes, the VOD's going to be here. We'll just have it on YouTube, so you know you'll be able to see it in the lives tab if you missed the start. And yeah, this was like Javier said, this was fun. This was cool. Thanks so much for leading us through it, Colin, and for the work you've done here. It was awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. I actually got to go chat with Mike. I think I'm late, so I'll wrap it up here. And thanks everyone for joining. We'll catch y'all later.
Bye.